Hello everyone, Pastor JillAnn here. This week I want to talk to you for a few minutes about how the Bible is even richer and deeper than we probably already thought that it was. In the Talmud, which is one of the Jewish religious texts, the Bible is described as containing the fire of God's Spirit. And that fire comes in two colors. Black fire, which is the ink on the page, the actual words of the text, the stories and histories and poems that we read and study. But there's a second fire too, and that is white fire. The blanks of the paper, of the page, between the words. God's Spirit is there too in the things that are left unsaid or unexplained. And so in the Jewish tradition, the work of examining, filling in those spaces, breathing in that white fire is called midrash. And it goes back thousands of years. Now, I'm horribly oversimplifying here. I would strongly encourage you to do your own research, or even if you have friends or family members who are practicing Jews, to talk to them about midrash, because they will be far greater experts than I. But basically, midrash is listening in the silences of Scripture. So, for example, what was the experience of your average, everyday Egyptian when all those plagues were being sent in the book of Exodus? Not Pharaoh, not the powerful people, just the average Egyptian person who was dealing with all of this death and destruction in a situation that they really had no control over. What was their experience of God, of life, of spirituality? That's a midrash question. Or if we go to the book of Esther, the book never tells us, did Esther enjoy being taken away from her family to be made queen? Or would she have preferred to stay home? And of course, although the Jewish tradition uses only what we call the Old Testament, midrash can also be applied in a way to our New Testament scriptures. If anything, the New Testament is simply an extended commentary on the Old Testament. In the parable of the prodigal son, there's a slave who delivers a message to the older brother. And the older brother actually says at one point, "Father, you've been working me like a slave." And I'm pretty curious as to how the actual slave standing next to him must have felt when he heard that. Midrash is about listening to the voices, to the experiences that have been ignored or silenced. Who doesn't get to speak? Who doesn't get named? And this practice of listening for the silences of Scripture, I think, is also a practice for our larger spiritual lives. Who in our everyday life, in our community, in our country, in our world, is silenced, not listened to, forgotten? What answers do we not think are important enough to explore? So I hope that the next time that you read a passage from the Bible, you'll take note of what's not being talked about, what's not being said, and discover that God has kernels of wisdom and beauty and truth in those spaces too.